So you've been extremely busy with Julien-K and the Trauma, Echo, and Dark Mode records being on the way. Could you explain how both those projects came to life and the inspiration behind them?
Yeah, so we were looking for some sort of a way to get out of the harmonic disruptor era. You can see some of the graphic style of harmonic disruptor, and the graphics really complement the music. All of this all has something to do with each other. The font is even was conceived by the graphic designer we work with. Got so mad at us because we were being so demanding. He imagined that he threw the Julian K logo out the window, and it all broke on the ground, and you pick it back up and it was all broken. And that's how the concept happened. And that's kind of the concept of the album, is this harmonic disruption, this breakage, this life disaster, and all this kind of shit that I write about in the album, referencing Chester and all the pretty crazy things that have happened, and terrible things and trauma we underwent. And I thought about, how do we get out of that kind of harmonic disruptor, modality into something new? Like, what's the chapter out of harmonic disruptor? And we were still kind of dealing with, Chester's death, and I had gone to rehab and all this kind of stuff. And I learned a lot about trauma, and I learned a lot about cognitive behavioral therapy, and how trauma works, and why we're all fucked up. I mean, that's what you learn in rehab, is what on earth happened, and you learn how to deal with it. And I came up with the idea of that trauma has an echo, and then I started kind of writing stuff that kind of went along with this trauma echoes kind of thing. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty awesome way to get out of the harmonic disruptor, like the explosion, and then there's like the echoes of this explosion. And so the music started, because with harmonic disruptor we went so guitar heavy, and really kind of did an Orgy album, which we thought our fans would really like. And because Orgy's not really doing Orgy, so we decided, hey, well, we are the guys from Orgy, and we have that sound just literally by playing a guitar, because we helped make that sound, or are largely responsible for it. We thought that, how would we get out of it, and what would it sound like? And it started becoming that we started writing, more electro, more synth heavy. Some of it sludgier, almost like a really heavy version of The Cure, which was really kind of cool and interesting. But it was still guitar heavy. It still had heavy guitars, all the interesting shit that fans love, with our Orgy and Julien-K, personalities. And it became this huge list, like I have on the computer back. If I open up Dropbox, it would be, I think there's 38 songs. And we were just like, oh my God, what are we doing? We're writing so much music, and we don't really know where to go with it, and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, I also really want to, I feel like we did this Orgy album with Harmonic Disruptor. I think it really makes sense for us to do why don't we do like an EP that's like hard electro, dark wave? Like, literally, like, tons of our fans are those people. We listen to that music. I'm like, why don't we just do why don't we do that? And then the band was kind of faced with like, well, wait a minute, we're already in the middle of this. And I was like, well, why do we have rules like this? We're in a new world when it comes to releasing music. And I never thought of these lately as albums. I think of them as collections, and at some point, after you release enough of this collection, you put it together and add some more songs and make it an album, because you want to make a product out of it. But I'm like, these are really like fashion collections to me. So I'm like, dark mode. Let's do dark mode. It's like, oh God, this fucking Ryan, Jesus Christ. And so we got to writing, and we actually we experimented with writing on, like, we used Pro Tools. We opened up, I started getting into Ableton, and we just wrote a bunch of songs on Ableton just to make us think differently. And we didn't use any guitars at all. And it turned out that we ended up getting that more quickly to the finish line than the Trauma Echoes stuff. And I go, well, what's kind of cool is we can release these as we see fit. So we've got a bucket of dark mode done. So you're going to get that for a couple months. And then it wouldn't be completely out of the realm of possibility that we could drop some Trauma Echoes as well, and take our fans on a journey for the next 2 years of all these really cool songs coming out. And then you could put it together into either 2 separate releases, or you could, we're known for doing double albums and quadruple albums. Obviously, you can tell we're mentally ill. But once we get all the stuff done, we can typically create a really fun and interesting package for our fans. And I don't know what that is at the moment. I don't know if Trauma Echoes is this like standalone, 6 songs or 12 songs or what it is, other than the two kind of like houses of fashion or houses of music right now for the band are Trauma Echoes and Dark Mode. And we just happen to get a bunch of the Dark Mode stuff done. So now that art direction and that sound and those videos are starting to come out, and the response was ridiculous. So I think that we're on the right track. I think that it was exactly what people needed, and I think that it's a nice breath of fresh air after doing this literally like an Orgy album with Harmonic Disruptor. I think the Dark Mode actually did a really cool job of freshening things up, and people are super excited about it. You have to judge, the success of this stuff now from the streams, and from the back end stuff that we see, because people can only see Spotify, but there's also Amazon and iTunes and Tidal and Deezer and all the different stuff. And you have to look at, the sales of the items that you're selling along with what you're doing and everything. And it's been a smash success. So we're really, really happy. We've got a couple of other singles lined up already in the system, already primed in the system, which means that the dates are chosen and they're going to be coming out on it. It's already put in. So we'll be doing new marketing and drops around all that kind of stuff. It'll coincide with us going on tour with Powerman 5000 in July. So we have basically a single lined up every month for the next couple months, which I think should be really fun for Julien-K fans. And anyways, that's a long-winded explanation, but hey, it's a podcast, so I'm allowed to kind of, make it long.
Now, I mean, one thing I do adore about Dark Mode is that focus on trying to keep a hold of your signature dark and heavy sound while kind of keeping guitars from dominating the sound and being more synth based. What was the most exciting thing about challenging yourselves that way? And what were also the biggest struggles you faced in creating that music?
Uh, let's start with the struggles first. One of the struggles is that sometimes only a guitar will work. And we really tried. We were taking guitar lines that we would write and then playing them on a synthesizer, and it just didn't work. So the sparse amount of guitars that are on this collection of songs so far, it just means that it wouldn't work any other way. There's nothing else that could do it, because believe me, the guitars right now in the studio, there's a couple behind me, but all of them are over there right now along this wall, and the rest are in storage. We have, if I could take the camera, and I can't, and move it around right now, you would see synthesizers everywhere. We're really, there's a Moog behind me with all the, modules patched all crazy, and we're doing crazy shit with synthesizers. And we just, despite all that, there were a couple parts that we had to, there'd be like a dent, with guitar that you just had to make it. Nothing else could do it. Nothing else could make the punch happen. So we tried and tried and tried and tried. So that's when we had to break out the guitars. That would be the biggest, how did you phrase it? The biggest obstacle and the biggest challenge. Yeah, that was a big challenge. And then the big, what was the other side of it? Just the way that you phrased it was cool.
Basically, the most exciting
The
thing about challenging yourself like that.
Yes, the most exciting thing was using the modality of dark mode to learn a lot about, like, dive deeper into synthesis and drum machines. And I'm trying to see if there's, oh, it looks like, well, you can kind of see behind me. So up on these racks back here, this is floor to ceiling rack of like synthesizers and drum machines, and that's super fun. So we bought new drum machines. We broke out our vintage stuff, and we programmed all this stuff, and that was really, really fun. So we have drum synthesizers and all sorts of stuff, and it's not stuff that we probably would have broken out for like a lot of other Julien-K stuff, even though we program a lot. All the drums are programmed on our albums, but we don't think as much of like, hey, here's this new fucking weird box, and it makes this weird kind of bass synthesis, and let's make that a song, and then just tweak that. That I think was exciting, in fact, so exciting that I'm looking forward to I'm not really off this kick yet. So I'm really enjoying being forced to just dive deeper into these other tools. Whereas I think that in other situations, we might program some beats and do some cool stuff with synthesizers or whatever, but I think we would immediately pick up a bass guitar and start playing the bass line along with the synth and stuff like that. Whereas this, we didn't. We were like, okay, well, cool, we got this idea. Now, how do we expand this just using these tools? And I think that was really exciting. It was also very exciting to work with the band using a different digital audio workstation. So starting stuff on Ableton, literally not because Ableton's better or worse, just because we're dyed in the wool Pro Tools guys. Amir and I are actually educators from Pro Tools, where we do work with them. And we shot press and commercials for them and stuff like that. So we're pretty locked in, and we love Pro Tools. But sometimes it's nice to be with a group of guys that can become so fluent in another language that we can get in there and write and use the tools that other system allows to kind of create different types of music. And then we just take it out of there and we put it in Pro Tools to finish it. For example, it's pretty hard for me to do what I do vocally in, say, Ableton or something versus Pro Tools, because there's just functionalities that in the different types of digital audio workstations that are great for certain things. That was super fun. That was super exciting. That made me like to learn music again. And at my age, I think that one of the keys to being able to do this and make it cool and exciting is being in love with learning. In fact, today I'm in after almost 2 months of touring with Edema and a couple shows with Julien-K. We've been on the road, and I just had a daughter. And today was my first day where I was coming in going like, okay, dude, you remember that you used to sit here, and figure things out and learn new ways to do this. And I had a lot of trouble today, but it just shows that if you don't flex that muscle, you lose the muscle. You've got to work out your physical body, and you've got to work out your mind. So this is me slamming my head back into doing this again. And I'm not having much fun today, but I will probably in 4 or 5 days.
Now, you're absolutely right about the gear behind you, even without being able to see what it is, because you got that really nice bokeh effect going on there. I'm still drooling over the amount of stuff that you have. That's a dream here. What is your favorite piece of gear?
I've got real glass. That's the thing.
Oh,
my favorite piece of gear that I currently have. Oh yeah. I'm using that. My trick is we're using real cinema cameras with real lenses with real depth of field and stuff. So, we have cinema cameras set up all over the studio, and I have a switcher in front of me, and it's a Blackmagic ATEM. And part of what we've been doing is we do a lot of live sessions like this for Patreon and all this kind of stuff, and I can switch the view. I don't have them all plugged in right now, but I could go turn around on my computer and switch to another depth of field, gorgeous cinema shot, for Patreon, and then turn over to this direction and switch to another shot with a GoPro. And it's been really, really incredible to incorporate that into our content creation sort of machine. You know what I mean? But my favorite piece of gear, I like the cameras and stuff. That's fun. I got an a Sub 37 by Moog behind me that I really enjoy. I bought that at the end of the Birthday Massacre tour. We were in Asheville, North Carolina, where the Moog factory is. And I went after the show. I went, and a couple days later, I went back with my girlfriend we actually just drove across America for fun, because we ended in like Washington area, so we were on the other coast. So she flew out, and then we just kind of, the whole band flew home, and I just kind of came back and took her all over the place. And so we went to Asheville and went to the Moog factory, and actually bought that off the factory floor, which I thought was really
nice.
fun. And the cool thing about Moogs is that, yeah, it's pretty rad, and that just has something awesome about it, and the nice thing about an analog digital synthesizer like that is that it's all there. All the modules are there. There's not a lot of stuff isn't happening in software. So, the knobs actually do something, and you have to, make it work. And a lot of times you can do stuff that you kind of can't find again. It's pretty fun. We've done a lot of stuff on that. And there's a matriarch behind me, a Moog that I love. That's actually a Mirrors, but the equipment gets pretty blurred in here because we both have recording studios right next to each other. He lives 1 block over, and we have a big storage unit with all of our live gear and all of our recording gear, and we just bring it back and forth. So we have so much shit that if you forget whose is whose. And then another fucking amazing thing I have down here is a Prophet, which is just amazing. I know that's three things. It's pretty hard for me to tell you which one's best because I had them just on the sides of me, right? Yeah, they just all do such cool stuff. I'd say the Sub 37 though, not because it's the best. It's just I think it really kind of re-taught me about synthesis, which I think was fun. It's just kind of the way they're laid out. They're just the modules are all there. You can imagine it would be separated right into a modular synth. And you could buy all the pieces separately, but in the Moogs they're just there and they're laid out. And then same with this Prophet 6. It's so cool. It sounds so good. I'm still trying to learn how to unlock the power of that synthesizer.
Now, speaking of Amir, I could have sworn I read an interview with you once where you said that he has a bad habit where he'll get new synthesizers and he'll just bring them to the studio and he'll dump them on you. Am I remembering that correctly? That he kind of, just has a synth addiction and doesn't know when to stop purchasing?
Oh no, Amir is buying. Amir's pretty legit, serious, like vintage and new specialty equipment collector, buyer, buy and seller. I don't know what you'd call it. He probably has $500,000 worth of extremely sought after gear. He's really good at buying it. He's really good at maintaining it, and he's really good at flipping it. So he's constantly, every week, he's constantly getting new stuff, and he's constantly moving old stuff out. And a lot of times for us, a new song will be like a new piece of gear will inspire a new sound will inspire a new song. So he's always looking for new gear because that becomes a new song. The stuff that lasts is stuff that ends up getting on tons of songs. And so my studio is the biggest studio. Like this is about like an 11 by 20 something room. So it's small, but it's you can fit, 4 people can work in here pretty comfortably. So this becomes the collaboration room. And that means that a lot of gear gets brought here, and because we'll want to be messing with it. We often will do a lot of our writing here. Anything that's done together is done here. His studio is more set up for mixing. He's a very accomplished and well-known mixer, and so his studio is kind of custom tuned for him to be mixing. And then he's got a ton of electronic gear, drum synthesizers, drum machines, and he has them all hardwired in so where he can just turn it on and go. And so he's got a unique thing there. But here it's kind of set up to like, we could bring drums in here. We could bring a couple of people in here and record a song and shoot it live. There's a lot of stuff here. We shot videos in here. There's a lot of corners and stuff that look Instagrammable. There's a lot of, it's just kind of like the collaborative space. And then it's where it's situated in my house. Right out this door is this beautiful, lounge with all the, platinum records, all the kind of stuff you'd expect to find at some egotistical rock star's house. And then my pool. And it is a rad scene. It's designed, my whole vibe, being the singer, being like the business, sort of like the CEO of our companies is kind of, I sort of shepherd everyone in and kind of, I'll host a lot of the ideas. I'll host a lot of the things that become our albums and the things that become our content in our businesses and our ideas. So this is kind of like an incubator here.
And what I love so much about the Julien-K project is just how deeply connected you guys are with your fans and how much what you do is crowdfunded. I feel that is so unique. As an artist that has pretty much experienced both major labels and crowdfunding, what is it about crowdfunding that makes it a more appealing option to you as an artist?
Well, you get the money from the people that actually like your band. And and that's it. There's no strings attached. The strings are really between you and the people that supported you. So you could be a bad person and fuck them over. Very few people do. Some people fuck up. Some people get the money and mismanage it and don't understand any of the mechanics of how this works. They don't understand the percentage that goes to Indiegogo or to what's the other one? Kickstarter, or anything. Or you could get involved in a thing like what's the other one that kind of that literally fucked everyone over? I forget what it's called. There's a couple different, ways it could go wrong for you, but in general, Kickstarter and Indiegogo are very reliable. They're not going anywhere. They're ubiquitous. And as long as you really you intend on delivering to your fans, I think it's an incredible way to do this. The way that we've done it is when we go to market with an idea, like we want to fund an album. The truth of the matter, and our fans have figured this out, is we already have it almost done. We're not like, hey, we need $100,000 so that we can complete this album next year. That is not what we do. We usually are like, like the first time we did this, we were number one in the world in crowdfunding during our campaign. We crushed it. And the day the campaign ended, we sent them all a surprise digital copy of the album in the mail. I mean, in their email.
Oh, wow.
They lost their shit. They didn't even know. And so what we tried to do was build that, we wanted to build that relationship that you can trust us. We're not fucking with you. We're not asking for your money to come back 2 years later with less than we said. We're actually going to over deliver. And I think that's a really cool thing that you can do. When you're involved with a label, unless things are going incredibly well, like in the old days when a label would really, if you were successful, they could really deliver a lot of cool stuff to your fans. Nowadays, with social media and the way things are, I mean, you really to do what we do. I don't know who's doing that. I don't know who is, when we were doing our campaigns, we were studying the packaging of Comme des Garçons and all the rad, Yoji Yamamoto and all these. We'd go to Japan and look at the way they pack their, buy like a rad jacket, and the way they pack it in the bag is like so nice that you want to take it out carefully. We sent everyone the gear they bought like that, and we printed thank you cards with handwritten like these gorgeous, like a thick material. And what ended up happening was everyone that got the packages from Indiegogo, like through our campaign, all of a sudden we had this huge new marketing, content of all these photos organically being posted online of people unboxing and laying out the items perfectly because we packed it perfectly. So I don't know who would think about that. I don't know what label would think about that kind of shit. They're just like, oh yeah, we sold this much, the band's big, and it just comes in a fucking bag, and because it's the least expensive way to do it. And don't get me wrong, there are, we have to also be frugal. We're not hugely rich rock stars. We've done well, but we have to be very careful. And there are times that we can't be so cool. But for that kind of stuff, that's what we did. And it really worked. And we would always do these interesting, fun things with the way, like every shirt would be folded the same way. And the little pieces of thank you and the different materials would be always the exact same in every one and placed in, we look at what Apple does, like how cool are those packages. And we were like, well, how can we do a version of that? And so there's just things like that you can't get. You can't get. When I talk to labels about doing deals with us, and they find out what we're doing, a lot of times they're just like kind of silent because they're just like, fuck, these guys are crazy. Like and it's the truth is we will work really, really hard for the people that support us in that capacity. We're very, very much the 1,000 fan rule. Now, we probably are lucky enough to have more than 1,000 fans that will pay over $200 a year for us. We have a Patreon that, it had at its peak a couple hundred, but it's a couple hundred that are spending, a couple hundred a year on us. And it, for a while there was, $6,000 net a month. And we deliver really, really cool content every week. And now it's gone down because it's kind of, it's probably not realistic I think we have about 200 or something on there. I can't remember what it is, but it's good. It's real income and we use it to make the music and everything. But the fact of the matter is, if Julien-K does something exciting, air quotes here, if we do an exciting thing, like a crowdfunded album or a big thing, and we want to get people involved, we can get, there's 600 to about 1,100 people who are participating. And so you do that times 200 or whatever it is, and it becomes a legitimate amount of money. And that's not really like when you think about like Orgy, I'm looking at a platinum record over there just leaning against my wall. Like, who cares? Okay, that's cool. It's because I don't even know where to put it. It's 1 million people. There's actually more. There was like 1.9 million people for that album, and it's like, so those numbers are fucking huge. It took us a long time to think like, hey, let's think super small. And the band, everyone was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, let's just see if we can get 400 people to get involved. And we thought like that. Well, we ended up smashing through our expectations. But what that mindset does is it allows you to really, really hyper focus on that small group of people. It's really, really tough as like this indie kind of band to deal with more than 1,000. Like we can't like personally, directly, like go ship 1,000 items yourself. Have fucking fun with that. It's when we ship shit from here, it turns my house into fucking IKEA. It is bananas. There is shirts everywhere and items and like I mean, it takes 3 or 4 days. It takes everyone in the band and our girlfriends, and it is a fucking process. It's gotten so crazy that we have to have a company do it now. So that kind of sucks. So it's not gonna be as bespoke as it was, but that's the thing, is that we're getting to the point where, hey, that works so well. Now we have to figure out, do you want to make music together or do we want to ship fucking merchandise together? Well, we've chosen music. But for a while we were doing everything. We were doing everything. We had a warehouse of our fucking merchandise. We had our warehouse of our gear, recording studios, all this kind of shit. And it's just gotten to a point where it's harder now for us to manage. We're kind of in that like phase where we're just at a point where it's, I don't know, we're getting a little too big for our britches, but it's a cool thing to do this crowdfunding and things like that, because it really helps you identify who cares, who really cares about your music. Do we have more than 1,000 fans? Yeah, we have tens of thousands at least for Julien-K. I know, because we've sold probably tens of thousands of albums, which is not very much. But we don't focus on all of them because we don't know how to reach them. We know how to reach the people that want to participate with us, and those people are there every year for our shit. And it's really, really cool, whether it's Patreon, whether it's Indiegogo and crowdfunding, whether it's touring, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty awesome.
Now, one of the things I really like to do in my podcast is a lot of times people, when they're fans, they're used to you established. They might know the basic information about your history, but they might not know the very, very early days. So what I was wondering is, one, what was your first introduction to music? And what was the process leading up to joining Sex Art? Like, what happened before that?
My introduction to music was, in high school, when I really kind of got into cool music, like when I discovered heavy metal, Metallica and Slayer and all that kind of stuff. When I discovered that stuff, I was just like, that really, really got me and sucked me in. And I had a few friends that I met, like heavy metaler guys, long-haired guys that could play instruments. And so I saw someone play an instrument for real, and I just thought, wow, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And that sounds funny, but in my small town, there wasn't people rocking electric guitars and stuff like that. That was not something that you see every day. Living here in LA and everything, everyone is street. I walk up the street, some guy's doing a solo in his house or whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And it's like, that wasn't happening in my hometown. So when I saw it and I started to understand that you could watch the videos on MTV and put your fingers where Metallica had their fingers and it sounded like Metallica, then I started going like, all of a sudden everything unlocked. And so I started learning how to play guitar, and then I used that to kind of meet other music people and so on and so forth. And I simultaneously couldn't get my head out of the stuff that I loved in junior high, which was Depeche Mode and The Cure and like all this like kind of like electro pop and New Order. And I started identifying. I didn't know what it was at the time. I thought it was just good songs and NXS and all this kind of stuff. And as I got older and I was into heavy metal, I started identifying that there's this other stuff that I dig, this new wave and electronic and industrial and all this kind of rad stuff. And Depeche Mode was with me through the whole thing. I loved Depeche Mode and The Cure. And later on, you start finding out what Sex Art and then ultimately Orgy was this. And Julien-K is this fusion of heavy metal and electronic and Depeche Mode, and the unique sensibilities of the way those things sound is what we became. And Sex Art was largely me meeting Jonathan Davis, and it was the first time I heard someone who was great in my life. I heard a guy that could sing. To me, I thought it sounded like Eddie Vedder back then, because he could sing and his voice, it was in perfect key and he had that growl and he could just do it like on command. And I was just like, what the fuck? What is this? And I didn't have any exposure to any of this. I didn't live in LA. I didn't live in these cities. I lived in a small, shitty town in the middle of California. And if anyone's been to the middle of California, I will tell you that anywhere back east is more sophisticated than the middle of California. The middle of California is hot, dirty, dusty. It's as redneck as you can imagine. And by the way, I am one of these people, so I'm not talking shit. So fuck you. But I mean, it is, the Central California was populated by, during the Dust Bowl, by Okies, by Oklahoma, people from Oklahoma, and all of that area. They got kind of, pushed out of that area. So it very much still is that. Now you go to the coast and stuff where I live, and everyone's fucking Apple and fucking Tesla and Google and rock and roll stars and movie stars. Okay, great. Well, that's only the edges, and there's fucking millions and millions of people that live on the edges, but there's this whole central area. And so that's kind of what I grew up in, and I wasn't exposed to this stuff. And I fucking happened to run into Jonathan Davis. He becomes my singer and my fucking buddy and co-writer and all this kind of stuff. I mean, how lucky am I? So that was when I was exposed to like a Chester Bennington, Jonathan Davis level of talent. And I keep lucking out by being exposed to these people. And I don't know what it is about me, but I've been so lucky because I've been in the room or part of such musical revolutions over the course of my life that I had to have other people tell me for me to be able to recognize it. So, I mean, and that's it. You're in the room with Jonathan Davis and you hear him sing even before he was, him. Well, you're gonna get chills up your spine, and I did every day with him. I was just blown away, and that's what made me think, oh wow, we actually have a voice. And I wasn't a big singer then, but I did write vocals and stuff, so I could sing stuff, and people looked at me kind of weird, like, oh, that's not horrible, like I don't think they even were cognizant of the idea of maybe I could sing. I wasn't cognizant of it. I was just writing stuff, and I could play guitar, so it was a strange road, but man, I have really, really, really lucked out. I've really been blessed to have the relationships that I've had and be exposed to what I've been exposed to.
And yeah, that was one of the funniest things in coming up with questions for this podcast. It's absolutely fucking insane how many parts of the 90s and early 2000s rock revolution that you were connected to. You played with David DeRue, who later went on to be Edema, Jonathan Davis of Korn, did some music with Chester, Jay Gordon. Like, you just kept on, like you said, stepping in shit. So that actually is a good lead into a question that I wanted to ask. Thinking about every single freaking thing you've done over your career, when you look back at your career, what are some hallmarks? Like, what are the most significant moments for you so far?
I mean, the creation of Orgy was a big deal because I feel like when we did what we did, Korn was ruling Korn was ruling the world, and no one knew how to get out of that vibe because they were so powerful. And I was really proud that we came up with something that could play with them, but that was very different. And Korn, funny enough, they were the only people who got it. They had our backs. Jonathan got it. My old fucking friend understood what we were doing with the eyeliner and the tight clothing and painted nails and silver lipstick. He fucking got it. And that's super fucking cool. And it says a lot about who they are. But I was very proud of that because I was in the scene with the Deftones and Korn and Limp Bizkit and everything. I mean, obviously we were all on this massive tour together, which defined an era. And no one was like us, and when we first started doing what we were doing, people were not too happy about it. They called us all the slurs you could think of. I definitely identify with the gays because I might as well be gay because I was picked on for it, and I paid all the price. And it was fun to be able to go out and look the way we looked and kind of burn a hole in people's eyes the way we did and sound the way we did, and then finally break through and deliver it in a way that people couldn't deny. That was super cool, and I'm super proud of that. I wish that Orgy still remembered that. It mainly, Jay, I think that he forgets like what it is that we did because, what they're doing now is, or what he's doing, because there's no one else in the band, but I don't think it's really on brand for what it is that we created. And that, that's fine. We just continue to do it in Julien-K. I think, I think, family values, that was an incredible thing to be a part of. I'm very proud of that. I'm super proud of my relationship with Chester. That was a game changer for me. I wouldn't be a singer right now if it wasn't for him. I wouldn't know how to do a bunch of the shit that I can do if it wasn't for him. And he was just a fantastic human being. And just being with him from the beginning to the end was an incredible journey. You know what I mean? Just when I say beginning, I mean sleeping in a car in Burbank to show up at the studio before Linkin Park was called Linkin Park. They were called Hybrid Theory, and I was there recording, the second Orgy album, and they were huge Orgy fans, and I ended up, becoming super good friends with them, but and Chester mainly, and it just blossomed into this like lifelong, incredible relationship that created albums and you know, he helped us. He was a huge part of Death to Analog and Julien-K, and that's something I'm very proud of.
And I thank you for sharing that because that was something that I was always curious about, like how the two of you became friends. Before I ever did this type of journalism, I ran a still going 20 plus year Lincoln Park fan site called the Lincoln Park Association. One of my biggest regrets, because I did go to the memorial concert in California, one of my biggest regrets, I tried to stretch myself to see as many people as I could while I was out there, and I stretched myself a little thin. And one of my friends that I was with at the time, they come back and they're like, dude, you're never going to guess what we did. And I'm like, what did you do? And they pull up a group photo of you and probably about maybe 40 Lincoln Park fans at your restaurant. And it was one of those things where I was like, oh, fuck, why can't I
Yeah,
have hung out with them that day?
yeah.
You said it so clearly earlier in the podcast. You just are insane with your output and what you write. How many demos are you sitting on? It doesn't matter if it's Julien-K, Dead by Sunrise, whatever, that haven't heard the light of day that you would like to someday, have the fans be able to hear.
A lot. I mean, not as many in Dead by Sunrise as people would think. We do have some stuff. I don't know exactly how much, but we do have some stuff that we haven't released, and that we definitely talked about how that might work, but it's still too touchy for us, too sensitive. But with Julien-K and even with Orgy, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Julien-K has a lot of material that we have not released or that hasn't seen the light of day. Just even with Trauma Echoes alone, everything we've written is not going to come out. We probably got 38 songs that I think any other band would be like, oh, that's a great song. And for us, we're like, I don't know what we're going to do with that. So there's a lot. There's a lot. There really is. Yeah, a lot. Could be in the hundreds.
And going back to your restaurant,
Yeah.
what inspired you to get into culinary? Were you always, someone who liked to cook, or what inspired you to go in that direction and open those restaurants?
When Orgy kind of started to kind of waver and kind of, we didn't know what was going to happen with it. I had done some other businesses. I did an apparel brand that did well, and I kind of started learning a little bit about business. And the restaurant that was next door to where I used to do hair, called the Gypsy Den, and I used to work at the Crew at the Lab in Costa Mesa, California. The owners of that restaurant were friends of mine, and they came to me and they said, "Hey, we have an idea for you. We know you've made some money and you've done some cool stuff. Would you like to buy a restaurant?" And I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And they were like, "Well, it's not for sale, but it would be for sale to you. We're kind of thinking about changing our lives and we want to do something different, but it's doing great and it could do a lot better if someone wanted to do that." And I was like, "Well, I don't know anything about restaurants. I can barely cook, and I do know a thing or two about branding and about how to position stuff and market, and I can do deals because I'd done a couple deals." And we kind of talked for about a year or so, and then I started dating a girl that worked there, and we got in a pretty serious relationship for a long time, for many years. And then I figured out, oh, I have a person there, and so I kind of worked with her, and then I came back in and I did the deal, and I bought both those locations, and we did so well, so quickly that it definitely kind of was like, oh wow, seems like we kind of know what to do. And then we opened up a third restaurant with Amir, and a couple of other friends. And we did so well with that, we actually owned it outright in under a year, which is wild. So no credit, no anything, just like owned it. By that time, I really thought I knew what I was doing. So I, crazy enough, did another one. So then I have 4. And then crazy enough, did another one. So then I have 5. And then crazy enough, started getting involved in another one.
Oh my God.
And by this time, it's been years. Yeah. So I had like 6 restaurants, and now I have 2. I basically used COVID as not only to get sober, but to kind of try to clean out my life a bit more. And when your restaurants that make millions of dollars a year all close for months and months and months, it's in the millions of losses, and there's not enough government money to help make that go away. So I could have kept doing it and made it work, but I had to really ask myself, now I'm sober. There's other things I want to do. My music is actually doing pretty fucking well.
Good.
And I just had to ask myself, do I want to go down there, and do I want to hire like all these people and deal with all these changes, or is 16 years or 15 years enough? And the answer is, I think it's enough. So I as leases started coming to their end, I didn't renew. And as we sold one, and so, yeah, I just kind of, over a couple of years, I kind of let these things end and sold the ones that I could sell. And then I'm left with 2 that are doing really well. And it's basically, if they're not a problem, I'll keep doing it. But I just don't know that I want to go down there and be a CEO anymore. And I don't want to go have staff meetings. And I don't really want to go, I can cook now. I can do a whole fucking lot of shit. I'm not an executive chef or anything, but I'm a lot older now, and I can do a lot. I can do fucking accounting, for fuck's sake. But I'd much rather tour manage my own bands and manage my own bands than manage a restaurant. So I just, at this point, I have managers. They report to me. And I just don't want to get as involved as I used to be. I just don't want to. I want to focus on my music. I have a pretty healthy knowledge that I will be dead soon, and soon could be 40 years, but that's soon. And I want to use my time to do the things that I care about the most. Do I care about the restaurants? Sure. Do I think they're changing the world? No. Do I think my music can dent the universe? Yeah, I do. So I think I'd rather do that. So
Yeah. And one thing that I love that you're a part of now, I love that you're a part of Edema. I love that you've helped those guys, get out there again and make some more music. You've obviously proven to me that you're someone who never sleeps because you have 10 million different projects. But what is the status of 360 degrees of separation? Is that still being worked on, and will we hear it in its entirety soon?
Yeah. I've got that album on this computer. The trick with Edema is that it's a legit band. So Julien-K is like, it's me and Amir mainly, and obviously Fu, our bandmate, is a massive part of this, but he lives in Canada, doesn't tour with us. The 3 of us are this production team that becomes Julien-K. It becomes Dead by Sunrise. It becomes all the different projects and remixes and movie scores that we're involved in. It's the 3 of us that do this thing. We're like a production company that's a band as well. And we bring all these other artists in to work with. And that's how we do what we do. And then I joined this band, Adema, who are old friends of mine. And they really needed, they have every opportunity in the world. They sold 1 million albums. They've got fans, but they haven't been able to hold a responsible singer that can actually carry the torch. Marky is a disaster, but he's got an iconic voice. He's got his brother's voice, right? It's like more pop Jonathan Davis. Okay, I would kill for that. I have to work really hard to sound cool. It's not that easy. He just sounds fucking great. It's pretty frustrating. But I have to fill those shoes. So it turns out I was able to do it. And the songs that we released did really well. But, it's a fucking band with 5 dudes in it that all and to do Edema, you got to get it all together. And they're all adults. They all have lives and wives and homes, and and it's Amir lives 1 block from me, right over there. It's kind of ridiculous. We are like LA stories. Steve Martin drives the car next door. We are that ridiculous. But that's what makes this work. With Edema, it's a whole different thing, and you have to organize it, and you have to get everyone together, and to get 5 guys together with instruments and all that kind of stuff, typically might need to rent a room and do all this stuff, and it's just a different thing, and it's a little bit harder. But I believe that to do Edema correctly, you need all the guys, and that's something that I didn't want to compromise on, because I've seen what happened to Orgy. And I don't want that to be Edema. Edema needs to be, if you're going to change out a guy, like get a new singer like me, get someone that understands what this is, understands the brand, and is going to fight harder than the band even to protect the brand and protect the sound. And that's what Amir and I have done with Edema. So we're very much, I'm the singer, but I'm very, very much acting like a executive producer and manager too, and helping kind of keep the band on track. And to do that, we're not necessarily like dividing up into tribes and just getting little parts and writing electronically. We're actually getting together and writing. So it's just harder. And I got to be honest, because I like to tour, and tour makes money, which I like money too. But I like to play live. When you tour, it sucks all the air out of the room. You can't record an album when you're on tour. And Edema's been doing 80 plus dates a year, and that's the problem. It's almost like you can't say no, because when you get offers, you kind of have to take them a lot of times, because if you say no, then people will. Sometimes you won't get offers again for a while. So it's very hard, and we just have to get enough time to be home. We do have a big Indiegogo campaign that I built for Edema to fund their album. That could help it happen more quickly, because if we could have a chunk of money to all go into the studio and record it, that would maybe speed things up. But I haven't been able to launch it yet, because to launch it, you have to film a commercial and do all that the right way. And that takes time. Once again, it takes getting everyone together. And so it's just hard. It's hard between Julien-K, Edema, and a baby now. And thank God the restaurants aren't on top of that as much. But, I'm busy. That's it. It's hard. It's hard. But I do have a bunch of new Edema tracks, and they are awesome. I mean, I could literally hit play and you'd hear a new Edema track. So,
and I wish you would, but I know you got to keep that a surprise. So, but just 2 more quick questions just to kind of start to wrap things up for you, because I don't want to take too much time away from your family. One of my favorite questions to ask: what are some of the funniest memories you have had over your career? Doesn't matter which band it's with. What are some memories you can think back on that make you absolutely lose it?
God, there's so many. I mean, it's just such an absurd job. It's just no other job that, when I was at the height of my misbehaving, I was, I would run to the other band's buses on tour naked, like with fans outside and everything, and run into their bus and jump in their bunk and cuddle with them, and and I would, we would just do so much, just ridiculous. We go into truck stops like in bikinis, and it's just so stupid. Being with Chester is pretty much like, there's so many just so funny stuff that we would do. It's hard for me to think of an instance, because we were just silly. It was just constant silliness. It just was so ridiculous, and together we were double the silly. And I'm probably less ridiculous now that he's not here. You know what I mean? It's like he was part of my ridiculousness. And we would just get in trouble together, and we were a handful. And that all the stuff is really funny. And it's not necessarily that I can think of. I probably should have something canned, ready to go all the time, because I do get asked that question or something similar. But it isn't that there's an instance, because, it really is just the absurdity of being doing a job like this. It's an interestingly absurd thing. We travel around the world entertaining, and and that allows you to, in some cases, even though it is a business and we are operating a business, we can also be pretty obnoxious and silly and fun, and it's been a whole lot of silliness and just fun stuff, and a lot of in the early days, a lot of drinking and nudity, and in the current days, a whole lot of other silly shit. So I don't know of an instance, but there's about 25 years of it.
And just to wrap things up, is there anything that you would like to say to your fans that are listening into this?
Well, I hope that I kind of laid out a little bit of what's going on for the next 2 years or so with Edema and Julien-K. This year we have a ton of touring. Julien-K is going out with Power in 5000 and Priest. We're leaving at the beginning of July. Our first show is at the House of Blues in Anaheim, and that's going to be awesome. It's super cool for a band like Power in 5000 to take Julien-K and Priest, more electronic bands, with them. It kind of shows that they're trying to do something more interesting than just like rock. I think that's super cool. The tour is going to do great. We're going to sell out a bunch of the dates. It's going to be fucking fantastic. And Priest is awesome. You guys got to go catch them. Adema is, we've got a lot of material written and demoed. We just got to get into the studio. And to do that, we just got to figure out what we're going to do. I really don't want to sign a record deal. I want to do it ourselves. I want to do it independently the way I'm doing Julien-K. And that's going to probably involve getting our fans, involved. And so I hope that everyone will participate when we drop this campaign and help us make the album, and that's it. That's really going to be it. We're going to be working hard through the end of the year. And then in the winter, obviously we'll be more in the studio. And that's basically the way my life is going to, look for the next 10 years is when it's hot, I'll be out touring. When it's cold, I'll be recording. It's kind of the hot, cold method.
Well, Ryan, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's definitely been a pleasure to speak to you, and I hope that everything goes well for you on those tour dates, and I cannot wait to hear your new music that's coming out.
Thank you. I can't wait to share it with you, and you're awesome. Thanks for doing this. I love this platform that you use and everything. I'll have to talk to you about it offline later. Thank you so much. I'm going to run to my next appointment, buddy. Thank you.